Good morning, YouTube. Welcome. I'm Michelle, and if you're new here, this is Magnolia Grove Homestead. I am in North Carolina in Zone 7B. I encourage those of us who don't have a 40-acre field to homestead and garden in whatever space you have. I am incorporating a variety of different methods in my garden, including raised bed gardens. I have vertical gardens, I have container gardens, we have no-till places, and also things like succession planting, interplanting, and we are exploring permaculture and learning about that currently as well. Every Wednesday during spring and summer, I will come out and walk you around the garden and give you a tour and kind of show you what we have going on. And I do that so that in case you're not in the space where you can plant certain things, or you don't know if you want to plant certain things or don't know what to expect, you can learn what to expect out of these things without having to do that first. For those of you who have been following along these past few weeks, I have done so much stuff over the weekend, and I cannot wait to show you all the things that are going on here. So let's get started. The first thing that is noteworthy in the garden are these amazing trellises. So I finally got my cattle panels up and got them placed where I needed them so that we can get everything to kind of grow over these arches. So I'm going to make a complete separate video about vertical gardening, but in essence, vertical gardening helps you to save space in your garden, but it also helps kind of keep your plants healthier. So I think overall it's just a better way of growing certain things. Not everything will trellis, but certain things will. For example, this Armenian yard-long cucumber, guys, if you remember from last week, that has at least tripled in size, and it won't be very long, and I'll be able to weave that plant in through these spaces here on this cattle panel, and it will take off. Also, the eggplants, I think, are going to start doing good. That's little finger, and then this here is the shooting star eggplant. They were riddled by pests there in the beginning, but I think they're doing really good now, and I think they're going to just take off. Pretty much all of my tomato plants are starting to set fruit, and they're starting to grow up. These couple here I put on a stake, a bamboo stake, just until they get tall enough that I can lean them back and start tying them to that cattle panel, just because the cattle panel is a little deep in the bed for some of these plants, and they do still need some support. Also, I wanted you to take note of interplanting. So I showed you guys that I moved beets out, and they will be growing underneath these tomatoes here. Also, over the weekend, I sowed some nasturtiums in the middle. There's a lot. Most raised beds are about 4 feet wide. Mine are like 5 or 5.5 feet wide. And so I feel like I have enough space in between these tomato plants where I can still plant something. And nasturtiums are supposed to climb. However, we were standing in the middle of these beds getting these cattle panels up, so I hope that didn't mess anything up. We'll just have to wait and see. We really couldn't avoid getting up in the bed to put these cattle panels up. Ideally, that would have been done before we planted anything in here, but, you know, such is life. In between these two beds, I have this panel here. This is zucchini, and this is summer squash. Now, I think that this summer squash especially is going to take a lot of extra work to get it to trellis, just because this is like a bush variety plant, and so I think I'm going to have to come out and kind of tie it up to the trellis. Now, summer squash, most of them are bush style, so for the most part, they may even have one long stalk that will come over the side of the bed, and maybe then I can, when it starts coming over the side of the bed, then I can work on trellising it up. Winter squash, however, for the most part, they will climb. And so when this summer squash comes out, then I'll be able to put in winter squash here and still keep this panel. I didn't put any T-post or anything here to like secure this panel. It is strong and sturdy enough that it is just sitting there wedged in between these two beds. There's about a 4-foot span, I think, between the ends of the beds, and we just kind of bent it over, and it's fine right there. I also wanted you guys to see these peppers. So if you go back to week 3's garden tour, you will see where we talked about pruning peppers. These are the ones that we pruned, these sweet banana peppers. And do you see inside how much growth has happened with this plant versus some peppers that we didn't prune yet because they were still too small, honestly. Like these California Wonder Red bell peppers. There's not nearly as much growth in the center, and that's because pruning your pepper plants is really, really good for them. If you've been following along, you will notice that I took out all of the onions here, and that's because we are getting to the point where we have 90-degree days, and that is too hot for onions. They're pretty well spent. I did keep these because I'm keeping them for seed. And I just want to see, I want y'all to see how this is progressing. So now these little spots here that had opened up have opened up into these little flower blossoms. And then that's where we will get our seed from. But where the rest of the onions were planted, I started a few rows of Stoll's evergreen corn. I think I got those seeds from Seed Savers Exchange. And down here on the end of that bed, I have another trellis going over from the green beans into here. These are cantaloupes. Let me get on the other side so you can see that better. So right here I have some cantaloupes that were started plants that I purchased from the nursery. And cantaloupes will vine, they will climb up the trellis, and when their fruits get big enough that they start getting heavy toward the end, all you have to do is put them in like some pantyhose or some mesh or something to give them a little bit of support so that they don't fall before they're fully ripe. Down here in this bed is where I sowed Kevladon Marvel runner beans and Cherokee Trellis beans. And if you remember from last week's video, these bean plants have at least doubled in size in a week. And they're going to start taking off really quickly. Over here in the other side of the bed, I still have my broccolini that we're letting go to seed. And I have all these carrots. Now I harvested a couple of carrots. They weren't anything to really brag about, probably about 2 inches long. And I'm hoping that the heat doesn't get to them, though. Like I said, it's almost 90 degrees, so I'm probably just gonna have to harvest them pretty soon to keep them from bolting. I planted that little sage plant that was in that little green bucket, if y'all remember, right here, just to kind of add a little something extra. It needed a place, and it needed to come out of that little bucket, so I stuck it here in the garden where we had an empty spot. These are mystery tomatoes. I have no idea what kind of tomato plant they are. They were labeled incorrectly. I'm assuming that they're like a grape or cherry tomato variety because they're very small, but they're already setting fruit. Ordinarily, I wouldn't let them do that small, but I don't know what kind of tomato plant they are, so we're just going to experiment with them. And then right here, if you remember, this is where all the cabbage and cauliflower was. It is entirely too hot for cabbage and cauliflower, any kind of brassica. So I sowed Jing orange okra seeds here. And then these green okra plants are some plants that I picked up from a local greenhouse. And I'm assuming that it's probably like Clemson spineless or something, because that's what most people plant here. And then beside the okra, there's also these 2 rows are rows of flowers that I picked up from the greenhouse. And then back here in this corner, I don't know if this is sunflowers or what. Those are the flowers, if y'all remember, that got attacked by the dogs, and so I don't know what they are. It'll be interesting to see what they grow up to be. Right here by the back gate, I put in just a couple rows of these antique bricks that I got from the nursery. And I put Russian pickling cucumbers. And then over there, there's cosmos seeds started. The cosmos will get about 3 to 4 feet tall, so I figured the trellis would give them a little support. But then over here, these cucumbers should vine and run all along the trellis, so that'll be great. Back here in my little pea corner, we have these sugar snap peas, the Magnolia snap peas, and then we have these, the Burpiana early peas. If you've been following along on my Twitter or Facebook accounts, we harvested several of these, the Burpiana early peas. They are the cutest little things, but I think I'm only going to have enough like for a dinner or two to come off of these for our family's pretty big anyway, but I feel like if you're going to plant peas to be able to can and preserve them, you need like 20 times that many plants. So note to self, when the fall garden comes, I will be planting a whole lot more. But I want you to just see these adorable little peas. We came out last night and harvested some more. Barry actually made a little video I might stick at the end. He is so hilarious. Here's the Magnolia peas. They finally started showing me what they can do. And they are beautiful. Though I'm not very big on like these flat kind of peas. They're good in like stir fries and that kind of thing. But I'd much rather have the early pea variety. So in the fall I'll plant more. And there's some of the sugar snap peas. Over here by the green stalks. So I still haven't come out and put the other support rings up for the green beans and the lima beans. But you can just see how well things are taking off in here. These right here, these are the green stalk green beans, and then there's some Henderson lima beans growing throughout. This big tomato plant is doing great in here. My ever-bearing strawberries are not putting off that much fruit, and I don't really know why. Those leaves are getting big though. I don't know, maybe they'll pick up later, or maybe it's because it's the first year. There's a little bloom so you guys can see that flower will turn into a strawberry. In between the green stalks, there's this hot mess potato bed that I actually came through the other day, and I just made this like makeshift wall. There's some bamboo stakes and some twine, and then this like plastic fencing stuff. just to kind of hold those leaves back because that foliage is going crazy. And there's okra down here, and then on the back side of this in the holes, I planted corn, but nothing could get rain or sun or anything because these potato plants are just crowding everything out. If you remember the last week or two, these potato plants had like white flowers with little yellow centers. Now these potato plants have gotten to the place where the flowers are starting to dry up. And when these flowers dry completely up, then within a week or two, I should be able to harvest like small potatoes, but if I leave them in another month or two, the potatoes will get larger. So I may harvest some small, but for the most part, I'll just leave these plants in the ground until these potatoes have a chance to really mature. Right here in this bed, I did a thing. I planted raspberry bushes. There's 3 different plants here. And I know that they're going to have to come out of this pot probably, but I didn't want to keep them sitting in the house not being planted. So I went ahead and stuck them in here. They're not going to bear any fruit or really do that much this season, I don't think. I think next year they'll start actually doing something. So that'll give me time to get them a permanent space somewhere in the garden. Because after they're planted in the garden, they will continue to come back year after year. Over here in the leaf green stalk, I came out and harvested pretty heavily. The chard and the spinach, a lot of the lettuces. I just cut all this stuff back because it is so hot that everything wants to bolt. So I'm probably gonna go through and take a lot of this stuff out. Like this spinach there's some little leaves, but when it starts getting to this point where it wants to flower, the taste changes, and so I'm probably just gonna take a lot of this out just because it's so hot and plant some like cool weather stuff. This sage though is not going anywhere. Look how gorgeous that is. Y'all know I'm in love with this sage. On this table here, these are the orange hat tomatoes. I finally got them put in their little pots. These tomato plants are the cutest thing in the whole entire world. I got these seeds from Baker Creek. They're called orange hat tomatoes. These plants will only get about 4 to 6 inches tall at their prime. You can see that they are about 2 or 3 inches tall right now, and they're starting to set fruit. You can see that. They're all starting to set fruit. And I got these for one main purpose. They're not going to be heavy producers. We have a family of 6. We're not going to really be eating a lot off of these. But I feel like these plants are a symbol of hope and encouragement. And I plan to gift them to people that I know don't have a garden and probably don't feel like they can really do a whole lot in their own space. I feel like it's very important to show people that, yes, you can plant something. Like everybody has a front porch or a patio or a windowsill even, that they can do something. And whatever little thing that you encourage somebody to do, you never know, might turn out to be something big. Like my father-in-law came and seen my garden. He was so excited that he went home and he started tilling up this spotted land right next to him, and he was telling me about all his plans to plant this huge garden for him and my mother-in-law to tend to. And it's just like an inspiration, and I feel like that is very important, to encourage people and to show them that yes, you can do this. I mean, am I able to have cows and pigs and the whole gamut of things and like acres full of high tunnels here? No. But can we grow something? Have we been eating out of the garden fresh food? Yes. And I think that is very important. So if you notice, we took the greenhouse frame and we moved it over here because I shared with you before that we have plans to expand the garden space. And I'm a visual person, so I kind of just have to see it. So everything has to be out of my way, and then I can plan what I'm going to do. But over here, we're going to utilize this greenhouse frame in these tomatoes that I didn't have space in the garden for. These first 4 buckets here are all Roma tomatoes. They will be my paste tomatoes that I will put up and preserve. And so I definitely didn't want to lose those plants just because I didn't have a ton of space in the raised bed. So they are all in containers, and they're going to do great. Over here, another mystery tomato plant. I put a stake in it. It looks like it's going to be a big, healthy plant. It's a lot different than those over there. So we'll just have to see what that does. This here is a sun sugar, yellow cherry tomato, Bosque blue bumblebee, yellow pear cherry tomato, and then these are the Candyland tomatoes, which is getting loaded with fruit, guys. Look at that. All those little blossoms will be fruit. And I'm not pruning these smaller variety tomato plants. I'm just going to let them do their thing. But if y'all can see in there, you see all those little baby tomatoes back there? They should be ripe within the next week. Probably this week I'll be able to start eating real tomatoes, which is exciting. And my last but definitely not least surprise for you guys is this. This is a kiddie pool full of strawberries. So over in the green stalk I have ever-bearing strawberry varieties. These are all bare root strawberries from Stark Brothers. These are June bearing. And so this year I won't get any berries from here. And actually if they start producing any blossoms, I'm just going to pick them off. I want these roots to really establish in here. And so next year though, June bearing variety strawberries kind of all put off their fruit all at one time, and so they will be great for getting berries to preserve because we'll get more at one time. If you've never planted bare root strawberries, I just want you to see they come in these little, they don't look like much, but this here is their crown, and you don't bury their crown. But then all along here, their roots extend about 4 to 6 inches out. And you just spread their roots out and put your soil up to their crown. And that's it. You don't cover the crown. Y'all just take a look at those. Because next year, this clip is going to look a lot different. Don had told me that I couldn't plant anything else, but considering that I spent like $60 picking strawberries, I don't think he's going to mind too much next year when we can pick our own strawberries from our own garden. I'm just so excited about that. But I think that's it for this week's garden tour. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments below. If you got any value out of any of this content, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and share it with people who you think might enjoy this. And until next week, I hope y'all have a wonderful, wonderful day. I'll see you later. God bless.